And so last time, let's see, what did we do? We closed out that backend node, closed the branch, submitted the code. It was there, it was working. We actually saw it connected to the database and all of that stuff. We're going to leave the JSON set up the way it is. And I'm kind of thinking, looking at it, that I might, because I actually just took a peek at it today. We have this API test endpoint that reads the file and pushes it. And I'm wondering if we don't store that data. So if it comes in and data has a value already on the server, that we just push it back. We then we would only have to do the file read one time.
It makes sense.
Essentially caching it, create some variable external to this that we cache that data into. It shouldn't change. It's the test data. Jack, welcome. And
thank you.
Repaste the attendance link while I'm thinking about it while I'm moving here. And so we're just kind of talking through what happened last time a little bit. And we started on the basic banner. Katie had done a lot of the images, so we were able to incorporate some of that in there. And so I have the back end and front end spun up at the moment. And so we don't need to look at the back end at this point. I did make a couple modifications for today. I guess we should take a peek at that. The register, all it does is console log. The login right now has some of the functionality where we did a find against our database using the username information. And I have to actually go look. I do believe Bob-Fortal is the username we have in there right now. So, there's no handling in here. There's nothing in here saying, hey, if they're not logged in, if their account doesn't exist, send a message back. None of that's there. Nothing is there. Dylan, welcome. I'm going to be copy pasting this attendance thing a lot. I can see that. Oh, I don't want to paste that. All right.
Thanks.
So right now that's just console logging that back. Like I said, we can get that built up. I'm not that stressed about that. I do want to continue with the basic banner. It's in dev at the moment because we got to the point we got the register modal to open last time. And I probably want to take just about as much time to go back through and add the login modal, and then we can add the components on the inputs and things to pass that data back and forth. So that way we got 2 complete iterations of how we built that out. So all of it really starts with, and it's not on our home component, it's in our header component. So it all is going to be handled by the header component. Oh, that's what it was. There was one other thing we wanted to start with this time, which is we want to create an abstract class. Okay. But let me talk through the modal here and what it's doing. And then we'll come back to that. So basically, when we fire the trigger register, it's opening the modal. So it's opening this component that we're bringing in, and it's just a component. Okay. The component has a couple of pieces you can do because they're modal, but it's nothing fancy. So if we look at this register modal and we look at our HTML, it has this map dialog title, map dialog contents, map dialog actions, which are the buttons that are firing the cancel and close. Nothing more than that. What are we doing with the service? Not sure why we have a register modal service there. We don't need that. Okay. Oh, I know what I was thinking, but that's the wrong place to put it. So let me take that out. We don't need the register modal. Because what happens is this is just our place to input the data from the user and pass it back to the calling component. Okay, so in this case, our calling component is that header component. So the header is going to handle all the registration, all the login, logout pieces for us. Okay. And so once we open that, we're subscribing to when it closes. So an event. Okay, the event timing, the modal events have an after close event that triggers. We can subscribe to that. When that triggers, anything it passes back is going to be passed to result. If they click outside the modal, you get undefined. Nothing's passed back. If you click close or cancel, we have functionality in there to pass data back. Okay. And it's just close and you pass whatever's inside there. And right now we're just console logging the result. Okay. What we want to do is build an API service. And you could go along the lines of, hey, we have a service here and it's an API service. And the reason I was talking last time about abstracting the API service is typically what I prefer, especially with enterprise level applications, is to have the API services with the components that need to make a push or a pull from the backend. Okay, which means you end up with a whole bunch of services. This get URL functionality, and some of the other pieces that might be in here, like endpoints, that can be part of the abstraction, and it's still available to any APIs we generate. Okay. Yes, it does mean that you've got HTTP calls all over the place. And it does leave the possibility that somebody could screw one up. But what it also allows is when you get half a dozen people working on a project, I'm working on the login logout component, so that's not going to bother somebody working on some other part of the application that has to do an API call. We have significantly less merge conflicts because we're rarely working on the same component at the same time. Okay, so we need to convert this to an abstract, and it has been a while since I've done an abstract, so we're going to look at TypeScript. What was it? Playgraph. Oh, I know what the playgraph. Class abstractions. Clearly, I've searched this somewhere along the way, and I'm going to go to the last one because quite often I go down through in the last one, I'll stop where I find something I really like. So we have an abstract class person that we're going to use extending it. Okay. Notice we have to do a super passing that name because person takes a name. Okay. It's a little rough the first couple times you see it, but we're going to convert this one to an abstract class, which then means to be able to do get test, we're going to have to move that somewhere. Okay. And that's the only one that we're working with right now outside of the get URL. We need to move test over to there. We are going to have to pass HTTP in as a part of the super. Okay. So this is a fairly easy change. It's going to break a few things at the moment. And we make that get test call, I do believe, in the home component. Yep, there it is, API get test. Okay. So what we'll do is, let's open another terminal up in here. You can never have too many terminals, right? And we need to be in front end. And let's see, it's going to source app. We'll do an ng generate service. And this is going to be in the pages home API. What I'm going to call it. So it'll be home API.service.ts is what we should get. Hopefully in the right place. There we go, right there. Okay. So we saw in our code here that we extend and we have to get the super, right? So this one extends. And this is going to be, and right now it's API handler service. So let's make this API handler abstraction service. I think it's okay just to change that name at the moment. And then we'll come back to this service and we're going to extend that one. And it's going to complain for a moment until we have the import. Yeah, it doesn't like some things like that. And then our constructor, we need to bring the HTML. So let's split these on the view to make it a little easier for us to figure this stuff out, right? So go away, don't need that. So we do need to bring in Let's see, config endpoints. Private HTTP from, oh, there we go. I'm missing a few things. So we need the HTTP client. And we have the injectable. We do need the behavior subject from first. And I think we could take that out because that's all going to be in this new service. Okay. So we'll come over here and we'll say there, and it's going to complain about order. Not going to worry about that yet. I want to bring test over because we really need it over here. And we need this get. Okay, and we don't have HTTP yet, even though we've declared it. So we need to do basically the same thing there. So it'll clear up one error, but add others, no big deal. We have to do the super. We take care of that, and what do we complain about? Parameter property must have an override modifier because it overrides a member in the base class. What are we overriding? Oh, no, we're not overriding anything yet. Let's see what it's complaining about. Endpoints. Okay, so endpoints is only used over here. Incorrectly extends base class. Types of separate deprecations of a private property HTTP. Oh. Interesting. I've done this before. I'm not trying to where we're getting the error here. Must have an override modifier. Okay. Let's see what we're complaining about. Okay, because we passed name. Setting up name. That's already defaulted in that one. There's the super, just like we did it. We're extending. I don't see anything in there that's saying that we did anything wrong. Okay. Types of, okay, weird. All right, that's an word. This is this one we can fix. All right. Give me 1 second. Great, I'm not gonna do that. I have it in another code base. So unfortunately, it's on another computer. Assuming I did that. Give me 1 second. Still looking. Okay, let's see what happened. There's a missed a character. The keyboard on this machine is not as reliable as I would like. Apparently, the Y key is not typing. That should be the right password. And that is off the screen. Am I going to get over there and back without breaking anything? I'll try closing and reopening VS Code. Hopefully, it'll open on the screen because there's no second screen connected. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'm gonna hop over there. I might drop video, might drop audio. I'll be right back in about 2 seconds. It's off the screen. I need to move it on the screen.
Sure thing. Take your time.
On my way back. Hopefully, I'll come back nicely there. All right, so let's see what I've got here. Then we'll put there and I'm in the wrong project right now, but I can get to it now. Let's see. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Good.
Working.
Scared me for a second there.
I can hear.
All right. So looking at the services, I've got my API handler abstraction. Wait. Oh no, that's the type. That's the test file. So it's export abstract class, just like we have API handler service. And then usage. Yeah, it has a constructor. Public HTTP. There's nothing in there that really has happened differently. I'm gonna look at one of the pages. Hold on, which would be the one. And it should be extends. Export class extends. With a super. The only thing I see different is my variables are public, not private. Which doesn't make any sense. The base class is, oh, maybe it's just the fact that it's not saved yet. Maybe. I'm guessing that's what it is. I'm going to close and reopen the editor here and let the tooling pick up the ESLint, pick it up. My guess is the ESLint was a little picky on that one for the moment. So let's go back into here. And we just close down all our running versions of everything, and that's okay. All right, so in a few seconds, we should know whether this works or not, right? And look at that, still complaining about the override and still complaining about incorrectly extends base class API handler abstraction service. And see anything in there that would cause that to be a problem. I'm not sure what export class extends. Yeah, like I said, the only difference I have is these are public, not private endpoints. Well, that gets rid of that one. And the constructor. Yeah, constructors there. I'll take one quick peek at something else in the other project. As it's talking about the override constructor, and I'm wondering if that might be a newer TypeScript thing. There's both HTTP, they're in the same order. Yeah, it's got to be something new. I mean, I'm okay with having the override modifier. I'm not worried about that. That isn't going to hurt anything. But what that now gives us is our home API component now has a service, and the test will be broken for this API handler service. So before we push up, because of that, we're going to have to go through the tests at some point. But what that also means is we no longer connect to API handler service. We want to connect to our local. So we get rid of this. And we want to import, not embody, the home API service. And it really shouldn't change beyond that. Right? We're just pointing to a different service. That service is using this as a base class. Because we're using get URL, it's using the get URL from the abstraction. Okay. That way the get URL, if I change it, it changes it for all of them across the board. Every API service we have connected up and wired up. Okay. All right. So any variable we have over here is available over here. So like this endpoints can be available over here. If I want that to be private, though, I need to be a little careful about it. And now looking at this, does it even make sense that we have HTTP coming in? The abstraction is not making any HTTP calls. Why don't we just get rid of it completely, right? Which then cleans up that override because it's not overriding it, and we just need to call the super to fire the constructor on the other side in case there were any code inside it. Proper cleanup, we probably could even get rid of that constructor, but I'm going to leave it in for right now. I don't think it hurts anyway. So now we need to test it. So let's see, we need to go to our backend. And we need to do an npm run dev, I believe it is. Yep. Well, I got that one right, didn't I? We'll go to front end, and we're going to do an ng server. We don't need to do the @ dash open. We have one open, so we can just refresh over there once it's up and running. Here we go. Now we shouldn't see anything different other than we move some things around. We got that abstraction in place to make our code a little cleaner and easier to work with. And we'll get rid of that, and we'll do a quick refresh. And there we go. We're getting, this is the data that's loaded from the backend. Okay, at this point. Register should still work. So what we need to do now is we have this API handler service. We just basically need to copy something like this home API, but we need it at the header level, right? So we need another terminal. Source generate server and the features header. And we're going to call it header API. What did I do wrong? Unknown argument. Well, that's new. Where'd it go? YouTube generate server features in the header folder. Header API. I think I hit a key just as it was doing it, so I might have. I am in front end source apps. Hang on. We're just going to generate one named server header service for right now. And see, that put it in the features folder, not in the header folder, but that's okay because we can move it and we'll fix that up here in a second. And then we want to rename, not delete. Header dash API service spec. Not sure why it wasn't letting me do that. That was weird. And then this one becomes header API service. Yeah, I know we need commas and things like that in there, and we'll clean that up. So stop screaming at me. There we go. And then this is the header API service. Oh, and then over here we need to import it and use it. And so then here, that's dialog. This is going to be API service. So we'll do a private API header API service like that. Now, thinking about that, we're not going to worry about there yet. And let's see, we don't need that. Our header API service has to extend API service, just like we did before, right? Which then means our constructor has to have the super. Okay. Easy enough. Okay. And what do we got here? Cannot find the name. Yeah, I know, because we haven't imported it yet. There we go. Okay. And then if we come down and look at our home component API service, let's get those other pieces we need. So we need the HTTP, we need the behavior subject, we need the first value, because we're going to be doing API calls. And see how this starts to become very repeatable. And we already have the API handler service, so we know that's probably going to go in there. And then we need a behavior subject. We need something to connect our data to. We're going to be making potentially two separate API calls. But think about this, we don't need our behavior subject for API calls. We need our behavior subject to track if they're logged in or not, right? Who the user is. So maybe it's something just along the lines of logged in user is a behavior subject of, and maybe it's just username. I don't know, right? Maybe it's more. For the moment, we'll just keep it really simple. Okay. New behavior subject. And we'll clean this stuff up later as needed, but let's just put this over here. And let's be smarter about it, right? We need a what do we need? We need an interface. Which makes this a lot cleaner, right? And it needs to be an optional username, because if we don't have username, they're not logged in. So right here, we are setting a default value. There is no username. Username doesn't exist. So we can determine, are they logged in, right? So it might be something good to bake into this header API service while we're thinking about it, right? Is user and becomes a really simple Boolean function. That returns this dot logged in user. Now this is an observable. However, I don't know that it needs to be an observable. It's very possible it may not need to be. So what if we just set this to be a user? And then on this side, our initial definition would look something like that. So is this dot has own property? So if there's a username key on logged in user, they're logged in. Has own property, just checks to see if that key exists on the object, right? Now, we are going to need something like this over here eventually. We don't need the behavior subject. We are going to need first value from. So let's think about this. So we have the modal for register, right? Register is going to take something like name, username, email, or let's say username, email, phone number, or username, email, password, right? We're going to duplicate password, make sure they match, kind of stuff. So we are going to, let's say, send registration. Sounds like a good one to do, right? And we'll do this one as an async. What's it going to return? We don't need to return anything. We're going to do all our stuff internal. So here's my question. If we get a successful registration, would the assumption then be that that person is currently logged in? Or do they log in
No,
after
you log in
registration?
after. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless someone can think of a reason why you wouldn't log in after, besides like convenience.
Yeah, it's annoying. I mean,
Well,
But
if you,
sometimes people are probably like we're gonna have teachers and parents and stuff. Maybe they're making uh, the user for somebody else.
okay, I can see that. All right. So registration seems the same. We'll have to pop up, we'll have to change some message, pop up some message saying, hey, user was successfully registered, something like that. Maybe they validate the email or something like that, right? So we don't need to do much then. We don't need to pass that data anywhere. But we do need to do something like this where we're getting the data. And this will be really the backend response. And we're going to wait first value. We're going to do an HTTP. So we do need HTTP over here. We have to pass the URL. Well, kind of hope we get the URL, right? And we're going to have to add data to the body and that kind of stuff. But let's get the try catch. So this is the first piece we have on the try. Now this is registration. And registration means that we've got to go to our config. And we need to create an endpoint, in particular in our local, right? So this is going to be registration. /API/register. Now this is a post, not a get, right? It is a post. We don't want to do that in the config. We just have to change that here. But we have to send it something, right? So when we're doing a registration, we need what? We need let's see, username, password, and email. Sound about right? Yeah.
At a minimum.
yeah.
Okay. And yeah, let's clean it up. Okay. I'm okay with prettier cleaning that up. And what are we doing here? Oh. All right. I'm going to get rid of the weird bracketing. I'm just sending this 3 separate attributes in. Just to keep that clean. And then, so really what we want to do is we want to create that to send to the backend. Right, that's what we're sending on the post. So when we register, we should get that object come through, right? At least that's my assumption. And why do I have I'm missing something? Oh, because there's a blank line, not worried about that. But, so we don't clobber this thing. One of the things I know we will want to do is let's just do a clean 200 response, right? Saying it was successful. And this is where we would do, what do we do when they successfully registered, right? We're saying it happened. So it's possible that this is not going to be a promise void, that we might want it to wait. So we have that timing to open something up and say, hey, it did work correctly, right? Right now, we'll leave it as a void. I think that's okay. And why are we complaining about that comma? Okay. It should be left in, but okay. Let's just console log those. API. Something like that, right? So now we have a place to send registration. We don't either is logged in yet. But we have this in the header, which, if you remember, we opened a modal, and the modal completes. Now, in the modal, we still need to set a couple things up, and we'll figure out what happens here when we come back from that. Okay. So in our modal, when we come in, we have the cancel and close to send state true and false. Right. So if it's false, it means we cancel on that state. Okay. We're not bringing anything in yet. We have no content. So let's put some content in, right? So we know we need a couple of things. So let's come out here and we'll go look at Angular material. Apparently getting a little tired. Typing kind of funny. All right, so we need inputs. And look at that, cool input. Let's look at some code. And they wrap them in forms. It's not critical. Okay. The map form field is pretty straightforward, but I mean not majorly critical, but we're going to put this in. One of the things you need to take a peek at is, we do need to bring in the map input module. There probably will be another couple other associated pieces we'll need to make that work. I've found, especially with the tests and things like that. So, I'm not worried about what the class is. So let's see, we'll have a username class. We might need it. Username, placeholder. And we don't have a value yet. This one's going to be empty. All right, so we have username, email, password, right? And I'm assuming everybody on the planet knows when you have two usernames, you want to pick it twice, right? So now we should have something that shows when we open that modal, in theory. And then we got to figure out, like with the input, how do we make it a password and things like that. So hey, look at that. We can take an input type password. Let's see what that does. Let's come in here and look. We don't have a type yet, but what if we do put in type password? Put the password down here, and we have an email. Is there a type email? There is a type email, so let's do that too. There we go. We don't have any logic. We're not tracking this data yet at the moment. I'll show you how we do that. That's not majorly complicated. Okay. So we got something that might actually show us something. Well, maybe. Yes. Not known elements, right? What did we forget? Well, what did I forget was, we got to do our node module import stuff for material. So we're bringing in the mat input for mat input module. This is the first one. I'm betting this is going to be the first of a few that we have to bring in. Okay. So mat input module, we'll put that in here. My guess is going to be we're going to need some form stuff too. This probably won't be everything we need. But we'll save and we'll go see what our next error message is. Oh, look at that. It cleared things up for us. Wow. Okay. I'm impressed. Except when we went to this level. Well, that's interesting. I haven't seen it do it that way before. We might have to go see the CSS and find out why they didn't stack vertically and not like horizontal. And what did we get? Synthetic transitions. Yeah, browser animations module. Every time I hear synthetic transitions, I think browser animations module because I've seen it so many times. And I usually just plug this in here. No. Angular animations, maybe? Maybe not. Oh, that's order. Okay, that's easy enough. And Angular Animations has no, okay, so we need to find the browser animations module, which it doesn't tell us where that is here, unfortunately. Although we do have a link, so let's follow the link and see where that goes and what it's going to tell us. Animations, blah, 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 which doesn't tell us anything we need to know, right? So browser animations module, let's go there. I'm just following the thread. Okay, I've done this a few times. I can track it down for us real quick if we need it. And we don't need the config. We just need to know where it is to import. So it's Angular platform browsers animations. Angular platform browser animations. There we go. And there's browser module. So put that there. Let's save. And let's come over here and see if we get any less errors this time. Ooh, less errors. And look, it's not complaining about our animations. It looks weird, which is okay. Because let's go back to our original code, because what we didn't look at was this has an example with full width. So let's go look at our CSS. There we go, full width. Well, that's easy. And they've got minimum max widths for forms. Okay, let's just grab all of that. That's easy enough to add. We don't need that anymore. We will need that eventually. Don't need that. Don't need that. Don't need the home component stuff. Need the header. No, we need the register. Okay, so with the register, we need some CSS. We're just going to say form. And inside form, we're going to have full width. Remember, this is SAS. We can nest things. That's always kind of fun. Apparently, I can do it with CSS now. We have form and full width. Right. So we'll come over here and so we'll just make this a class form. And where did they put it? Did they put it on the form field? Okay, so the wrapper form is form, and then form fields are the full width. Okay, so we need our little form thingy. I don't usually put the form in. It works just the same, but we can put it in.
Is it generally better for accessibility to have the form marked like that?
Well, most of the stuff I'm building is internal for most companies, so most of them are like, don't even worry about it. Yes, it is better for accessibility to have it that way. So this is full width, right? And so we paste that in a couple of places. And now, well, it's starting to look like a form, isn't it? Sure, why not?
All the placeholders are still username. All the placeholders are still username.
Well, the place. Oh, yeah, probably. Yep. You know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. We got something working, right? So we can go back, fix placeholder usernames. Yes. Let's see. Probably don't need a placeholder for password. Okay, so we've got this here, and we get on close and on cancel. What we need to be able to do is, well, there are a couple things we want to do, and I did notice our buttons, we don't have a style, right? We don't have a styling set. So when we looked at our components there for the assistance in the grade level, if we look, we had on our buttons the color primary, right? So we need a primary and a secondary. And I'm not 100% sure it's secondary, but we'll figure that out. I'm going to steal that real quick because on each of these inputs, you can do basically the same. Oh, not on the inputs. I don't want to do it on the inputs. I want to do it on the buttons. There we go. And let's go a quick peek at the buttons on Angular. We want a primary and an accent. Or primary and basic. Basic's probably just as good, right? So we'll do one's primary and the other's basic. And now your quick fix. There we go. Let's see what we look like real quick. Well, that's particularly ugly. I'm not quite sure what happened there. Do we have a difference in button types? These are matte buttons. And these are matte raised buttons. Well, that would be a difference, wouldn't it? All right. Let's try that again. Oh, now they're starting to look like something. Right. But nothing happens when we submit other than we send that to the back. And it's not sending the right data to the back. It's just what we added as a mock in here. We got to capture that data. Okay. So one of the things that Angular lets us do, and there's a couple ways we can do this. And probably the easiest in handling this is to create a couple of data points that we can then have it pass that data along. And like on input of the passwords, we can, at every character type, we can check to see if they match, kind of stuff. So we have username, we have email, password 1, we have password 2. Okay. Not checking anything yet. I just want to see if when we click close, we can get different values into there, right? So let's do a console log of username, email, password 1, password 2. And it's complaining because we didn't put the this on those, which is going to cause some problems. So and we are going to need this structure eventually, so it's okay to type this in, I think. And now it's going to complain because it's too long. Okay, cool. Now the question becomes, how do we get it from there to here? Okay, Angular by default is unidirectional, so you're either pushing from the back to the front or from the front to the back. The back being the object, the front being the HTML. Okay. In Angular JS, the original version, everything was bidirectional by default, and it was a nightmare. In this case, we only have 4 objects. We don't have a row with 50 objects on the row and then thousands of rows, which bidirectional just goes haywire trying to keep up with everything, right? We have 4 objects here. And so these values are where it becomes really interesting because we can use something called a two-way data bind of ng model. And ng model is smart enough to figure out all the pieces we need there. So that if the backend changes, the front end's reflected. If the front end changes, the back end's reflected. It handles all that for us for the values. So this, we want to fix that. Yes, I know. I want to fix that one. I want to fix that one. But we're basically two-way data binding. So we could allow like a reset or something like that. But let's see, let's change this to email. Change this to password 1. And this to password 2. And then we'll fix the linting. And then see if it works, right? There we go. Linting is awesome. And hey, we broke a few things. Oh, okay. My suspicion is it's not recognizing, it's saying it doesn't recognize ng model. Event is not assignable to type string. Well, that's not what I expected to see. Can't buy it the ng model because it isn't a known property of input. Okay, I expected to see this one. That was the message I expected to see. Let me copy that. This has been researched once or twice, right? Can't bind. Okay, here's the component. Okay. So he's got, see, now this is completely wrong because input is an input for the component that doesn't relate to this as an input. But he's tying to tests, and he has this public test string, which is fine. Oh, there we go. That's the one. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, let's put the forms module. I told you we had more imports to do, right?
Seems like a few people have had that problem.
Yeah, a few times, yes. And order. There we go. And then forms module. Yeah, it's a common thing. And we refresh, and hey, we're not blowing, well, we're blowing some things up, not everything up. Okay, so if ng model is used within a form tag, either the name of the attribute must be set on, or the form control must be defined as standalone in ng model options. Ng model is used, okay, so that's the form tag that's causing problems. I'm just gonna take the form tag out for right now. Actually, I'm not gonna take the form out. I'm gonna make it just a div so we keep that class up there. No, there we go. Okay, so the fun part here then becomes Bob at I don't know informal.com, so that's, and if we hit submit, remember we wired up submit to show those bound data variables. Look at that. There's our data. We passed it from the HTML to, as we typed, it changed it. Okay, that was the cool part. As we typed, these got changed. So we can add some validation. So, you know, what do we need on validation? Well, there are a couple of things we need on validation. So we need to say, do passwords match? And we need the references to the data, right? There are a couple of ways we could do this. We could use password 1, password 2 here directly. We could pass them in as a reference. I think that we can just use the existing, right? So it shouldn't be too hard. It should be something like return this time password 1 equals this time password 2. That shouldn't be really a complicated one, right? We need that. And then the next thing I want to take a quick peek at, because I haven't done this in a while, is trying to save my password. That was kind of cool. I want to check the Angular material for the input and see how it validates, because I haven't done the validation in quite a while. Right, so how do we validate? All right, so input text areas, blah, 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 form field features, placeholder, changing when error messages are shown, accessibility errors and hints. All right, so errors appear instantly. Okay, so that's kind of what we want, right? Let's view our code. And we need it on the second one, not on the first one. Not worried about that. So we have this whole concept of an emat error with an NGF. Well, that's really easy given what we have. So let's grab this. And I haven't used that before. That's really kind of cool. I like that. And error state matcher. So the exporter class implements error state matcher. Ooh. Okay, so this is doing hardcore validation, but I don't know. So he's doing as an email form control. I was really hoping not to go quite that far with it. Okay, because here they're creating a form control. And the form control is tied to email. Although I suppose we only have to tie it to the one password. We don't have to tie it to both. All right, so let's try this then. I'm gonna kind of sort of go along these lines and see if we can do something like this. Okay. Control form is error state control or null form group directive ng null boolean submitted. Validators required. Validators email. Yeah, this is way more than I want. A whole lot more than I want. But we can, I think we can do something with this because he's using the email form control to trigger the error. So I think we can kind of steal the concept. Without 100% full form implementation. We need it on the second password. So we're going to have in here a emat error. The NGF is just going to say do email do passwords match, right? And because it's shorter, we get to do the opposite fix. There we go. Okay. So they do match until you do something like this. And we're not getting any checking at all. We did save. Let's see if this is even being fired, right? Whoa, what was that? All right, whatever. Holy cow.
I think it's going.
I'd say it's going. So if it's firing and it's returning a value, why are we not seeing it? Okay, so then So let's see what data it's seeing and what it's returning. So it's saying they match. Now it's saying they don't match. And you can see my new value. So that error should have popped up. But it's not. First time trying to work with a mat error, so let's just ditch the mat error. And what do you not like? Let's go put it back the way it was. Okay, so it's going to look ugly for the moment. We can fix that. No big deal. Look at that. It's already got it down. It's inside. Oh, it's inside the form. Doesn't want it. We don't want it to be inside the form. Maybe that was why it could have been why that wasn't working. It needs to be outside the form field. Although oddly, it shouldn't be. Oh, we're in the wrong state. They do match, so it's displaying it. We need to be in the opposite state. We need it to be false. So when they do match, we don't want to see something. We want to see something when we do this. And we can disable the submit button in that case too. So this is just a matter of going disabled. Equals. Yeah, you want the linting is awesome in keeping your code the same. It's annoying when it changes your code every 5 minutes, right? When you're creating something brand new. So the submit button is what we're looking at. Oh, look at that. The submit button is disabled because my passwords don't match. Although oddly, we're going to get one here. Because we're not even validating that we have data at the moment. I'm just going to leave that alone for the moment. Okay. So it's working, sort of. I mean, it's kind of ugly there, but it does what we needed to do, right? We can make it red. We can make it smaller. We can do lots of things to make this handier than it is, but it's working, right? Yeah, we're not as accessible as we need to be, and we'll figure those out as we go. Okay. All right. So given that, we now have potentially data. And forget about the HTML for the moment. Potentially have data. We have this cool little, well, not this cool little, that's just a match. This cool little set of data that we can do something with, right? So let's say const data equals that, right? So if we get to the on close, we should be able to send the data, which means then I just come in here and I go data. Easy enough. So what then happens is this gets passed back to the header component on the complete. So the second thing we want to do is we have the status. If so, result.status equals false, we also want to return. And you could do them as two separate. You could do it as one individual. It doesn't bug me too much either way. But in the case where we pass those two, that means data was sent. We have a username, an email, and a password. Okay. Now, thinking through this really quick, we send a password 1 and 2. We don't need to send both passwords if they know they match, right? They're exactly the same. Why send both? So this is where we need to make our API call. We have our API service. Send registration. And we're going to pass it username. So result, username, result, password, and results, email. And that one is a little annoying. We don't really need password one in there. We just need password, right? Now, we might want to do something after it completes. So let's do an async. And we're returning nothing. So promise void. And then we'll say await. Not really complete, but you know, the process complete. I'm okay with just that. Ready here. There we go. So in theory, this should fire something to the back end. The back end should do some stuff and send something back to the front end. So we should see some loggy kind of stuff, like not there, but here. We should see something in our console for the front end too, right? That's the hope anyway. And all right, we're running out of time. So let's see what we get. So my name in. And we're going to do PASSWORD. They match. We'll put this on the console because we want to see if anything happens over there. Register returned, registration complete. It did send something to the back end, in theory. Let's come over here and look, and what happened over here? Oh, that looks good. Oh, look at that. Body. Username, password, and email was sent to the back end. This isn't real pretty. I mean, this is the entire response, right? We don't need the whole response. We just need that body. So let's take a quick run through. And what we should have done is not request, but request.body. But it worked. We sent it all the way back to the back end, and then it sent that 200 back to the front. And, you know, if we wanted to actually say something, we can actually, let's say we send back request.body. And so we'll try again. And submit. And it returned it completed. It didn't return the body back. That's okay. There we go. There's our body. Quite the email and quite the password, right? But you saw it made the round trip. Not quite sure why the send, and maybe it was because we had JSON, maybe I didn't stringify it, maybe it needs it to be, you know, I don't know. Not going to worry about that at the moment. We got round trip stuff from front end to a back end server, back to the front end that are running separate. You know, I was actually working with somebody the other night whose entire application was hosted by the back end using EJS. A lot harder to trace some of that stuff through when they're not separate. Okay. Okay, we got through a lot. Questions, comments, and concerns? I'm assuming I lost you a little bit in some parts, but this is recorded.
Yeah, we'll pick it up eventually.
Okay.
Yeah, so where do we go from here? Where's the trajectory, I guess?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're eventually going to need some back-end stuff in place. We do have cards for wiring the auth, cards for wiring the API to the front end kind of stuff. And most of what we need in here is, you know, do we take that username and put it into a database? Do we return an error when they put the same username in a second time for registration kind of stuff? You know, we're not logging them in. So from the registration standpoint, I need to pass back to the front end status information saying, was it successful or not on registration, right? Whatever the message that the backend sends to the front end, I mean, it could be just as simple as the user already exists. So we can pop that up. Before registration successful, we pop that up. We need to do the login, which if you remember, we have something on that API service to track whether they're logged in or not. So we'll have to kind of wire that to change those buttons. So when they're logged in, you know, what are we going to have? We have a little person icon or something like that that becomes a menu that can drop down that they can log out. Right. So at this point, we've wired up the front end portion of this. Not pretty, but it works. Okay, and I'd much rather have it work than be pretty at this point. We can figure out pretty later. Okay. We need to wire up login. It doesn't work at all. Okay, there's nothing there.
Right.
You know, and that's I mean, at the moment, that's my focus in helping you guys is, you know, let's walk through these common things. Setting up a login, a logout registration, and wiring it to a back end. That's pretty common stuff. Popping up a modal is one of those things we do a lot. Okay. You know, in terms of where you guys can help, the auth, the wiring up of the login, the logout, getting stuff into the database, getting stuff from the database, all the basics are there and ready to go. I just haven't implemented any further because I know you guys have recent experience on that, and you're not going to struggle nearly as badly as I will. And I don't want to waste your time seeing something you already know, right? We do need another service created to maintain what information they've selected here. So when they start the test up, we can see that they're in 4th grade and they want to go through it fast. Okay. That's a pretty straightforward service. There shouldn't be any real hiccups on that one. And then the test start page. I was going to really kind of get everything that's in the next sprint backlog and dev. If we get those through, I'm going to count the vast majority of the MVP of this done and probably start a second round where we'll start picking up some of these others and fill out running through a test. I mean, we're a month into this, a little over a month into this. We've gotten a lot done, a lot of cool stuff done. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, I think you kind of went through everything.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jack.
Sure does help.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Anything I missed? Anything that I ran through so fast your brain went, what the heck did Bob just do?